Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a review of a Frederic Malle, and Frederic Malle reviews are coming hot and heavy. I reviewed all 4 of the Desert Gem collection, and there is a confirmed rumor. It was a rumor previously, but it's now been a confirmed rumor that Frederic Malle has a new Desert Gem coming out within the next month or so. It is currently June 11th of 2024, so probably by July, end of July, we'll see a new Desert Gem available for purchase, and it's called Hope, and it's created by Dominique Ropion, and it's going to be a heavy oud musk fragrance, apparently. So I can't wait to smell that. Cannot wait to get my nose on that now that I've reviewed all the Desert Gems from Frederic Malle. But this is a fragrance that I've had in my collection for 3 or 4 years now, and it's a fragrance that, quite honestly, can be quite stumpy. It can stump you. You know, it can really kind of take you back and make you question what you're smelling, because it's a very strange bird. You know, it's kind of a fragrance that takes inspiration from the traditional past, but it's done in a very modernized and unique and artistic way. And it is called Music for a While by Carlos Benaïm. Now, I love this name. Frederic Malle sort of went on this campaign of doing strange names from here on out. And this is where it really, the weird naming began as far as I'm concerned. But I like Music for a While. I remember a lot of people gave Music for a While the name Music for a While a tough go of it. But I actually really enjoyed it. And you can see I put a respectable dent. I am going to show everyone my spraying routine just because everyone kept asking. So this is my spraying routine normally. Bam, bam. Frederic Malle sprayers are fantastic, by the way. Look how much juice it dumps on your hand. And if you really want to go crazy, you can put some on your shirt and then everyone will smell you. But so this is a 2018 release. Carlos Benaïm is the perfumer, who, by the way, we reviewed Dawn, which was a Carlos Benaïm fragrance. And I mentioned how Carlos Benaïm is just an all-star perfumer in my book, doing things like Polo Green, going with a career, doing things from Polo Green all the way to stuff like Dawn and Music for a While. And of course, the great Dunhill Icon from 2015, which sadly, Parfumo shows is discontinued. I need to review that because that deserves some love. I can't believe it didn't even last a decade. I really thought that was one of the best things Dunhill put out since, I couldn't even tell you when. Dunhill Blend 30 maybe in 1978, but it's been a long time since Dunhill had been relevant. Carlos Benaïm brought them back with the Icon creation, and so if they did discontinue the original, if that is true, that's very sad. But let's stay on topic and talk about Music for a While. Let me read you the blurb. So, well, first I'll read you the note listing. Pineapple, lavender, patchouli, and what Frederic Malle calls a caramel allure irresistible. I guess that is alluring and irresistible caramel. I must admit, I do not get a caramel note in this, though. But here's the blurb. At a party on Paris's Rive Gauche, a woman's fur coat is lifted from her bare shoulders, exposing her neck to the candlelight. Aware of many eyes upon her, she pauses, smiling to herself, before emerging like a conqueror from the shadows. A sensuous body of lavender is warmed by patchouli, amber, and vanilla, and transformed by notes of pineapple and mandarin. The music is in the details. And again, I like Music for a While as a name because it's almost like you're wearing your fragrance for a while and it's music for a while. I don't know. I kind of like it, but I know some people were like, boo, but I enjoyed it. So here's the thing about Music for a While, that it can be summed up as kind of a modern day fougere, okay? Because it's a fougere in the traditional sense. In every traditional sense, it's a fougere, but with this modernity, with this modern twist, okay? The fragrance opens up with a big dose of pineapple. You get the structure of the fougere instantly. All right, so you will get the structure of a fougere. If you're familiar with the fougere category in general, it is a category that dates back to 1882 with Fougere Royale, Houbigant's Fougere Royale, and fougere literally translates to fern-like, so smelling like a fern. And for those of you who know, ferns do not have a smell. I know somebody argued with me on that on the internet the other day. I'm telling you, ferns do not have a smell. They don't have a smell in the same way a rose or something has a smell. You could make the case that, I guess, any outdoor plant of some kind has a smell. You could rip a leaf off the tree and go, it has a smell, but it doesn't truly have a smell, okay? And so their creation was trying to add this man-made smell to an object that is, in essence, smellless, okay? There isn't a proper smell to a fern, all right? And so they've created that by using some very traditional ingredients. One is lavender, one is geranium, one is oak moss, one is tonka bean. Those are the main elements of a fougere in there somewhere, okay? And whether it's tonka bean or coumarin or whatever it is, that sort of tonka-like smell. So there are a few things that make Frederic Malle's music for a while so modern. And the pineapple note is front and center, though. We'll talk about some of the other ones here later on. But pineapple has a very interesting history when it comes to perfume, because many folks, when they think of pineapple, think of Creed Aventus. Everyone thinks about Creed Aventus when you think about pineapple. And pineapple was actually used years and decades before Creed Aventus. If you're familiar with a fragrance like Lapidus pour Homme, there is a big pineapple note in the top of Lapidus pour Homme. This is from the 80s. And now this also has that 80s sort of DNA, if you will, that powerhouse creation from the 1980s. But what's very interesting, and it's worth noting that the creator of Aventus, who everyone instantly thinks of whenever they talk about this pineapple note, and I've got an Aventus video on the channel. It's not really a review, it's more of a ramble on Aventus and everything that's gone on and all that stuff. But the Aventus sensation, if you will. So Aventus became basically a sensation. It became such a hit. People who weren't even into fragrance were coming around and going, I want to smell Aventus. You know, it became that kind of a thing, right? And there's a book on it called The Ghost Perfumer. And it was written by a fantastic gentleman, Mr. Gabe Oppenheim. And if you're into fragrance, I would urge you to sort of check out that book if you can. But it mentioned that Pierre Bourdon, who it was the teacher of Jean-Christophe Hérault, who made Aventus, sort of was using the Aventus trick to add this freshness, this fruitiness, this citric fruitiness to the top of many fragrances, dozens and dozens of them, before Aventus became the hit that it became. So Jean-Christophe Hérault kind of took that trick from Pierre Bourdon's bag of tricks and used it to, you know, having a new, I guess, person using the trick all of a sudden became a huge hit. And Olivier Creed, the absolute shyster that he is, couldn't even have imagined what a huge hit Aventus would become, right? And it did. It completely took off. I mean, it took Creed to heights that I don't even think Olivier Creed in his wildest dreams thought of, right? So the reason I'm going through this is that, to me, music for a while is never created if it wasn't for Aventus. That's my opinion, okay? I'm not saying it smells like Aventus, because it doesn't. In fact, you could even argue that the pineapple note in this is better than the pineapple note in Aventus if you just take pineapple to pineapple. But I think what ended up happening is Frederic Malle looked at the landscape of the perfume world and he said, okay, every single person and their mother is doing an Aventus type clone or a take on Aventus or something like that from 2010 to 2016. Let's put our own stamp on this particular genre. And I think he thought 6 years was more than enough to be removed from what was happening with Aventus. And so let's take this fruity, very likable, popular pineapple DNA and build a fragrance around it that smells nothing like Aventus, okay? While also using some of the very popular notes that are in Aventus, for example, vanilla and pineapple. And he did what I think somebody who really understands perfume would do. He looked and said, what is Aventus? Well, Aventus is a chypre. It's a proper chypre. Most people don't realize that. It is a fruity chypre at its core. It has the labdanum, it has the oak moss, it has the bergamot in the top. The construction of Aventus is a chypre, and that's why I think Aventus lost so much of its pop, so much of its masculinity whenever that 2014, 2016, whatever it was, oak moss ban really kicked in, because the oak moss played a vital role in Aventus. It made it feel much darker and heavier and richer than the batches that came later on. And that was a huge deal, right? But I think Frederic Malle looked at that and said, okay, Aventus is a chypre, but let's take that popular bits and pieces that made Aventus so popular, but do it in a fougere, okay? Now, fougere and chypres, you could argue, share some common ground, okay? They both have oak moss normally in them, but in a nutshell, it's a completely different category, and the smells are completely different to the nose, to my way of thinking, okay? Now, to make it even stranger, at least for an outsider, let's go ahead and market it towards women, because that's what they did with music for a while. Most people don't realize that, but at least according to Parfumo, and reading that blurb on the Frederic Malle website where it says, a woman's fur coat is lifted from her bare shoulders, okay? And so if you go to Parfumo, music for a while is marketed towards women, which, to be honest, I had no idea until a couple months back. I noticed that, and I was like, what in the world? I wonder if that's a mistake. Because surely, worst case scenario, this is unisex, surely. But then when I read the blurb on the Frederic Malle website, I was like, okay, I mean, maybe all signs point to this is a feminine targeted release, which is shocking to me because most fougères are masculine in some fashion, some form or fashion. Most fougères are at least unisex at the minimum. So that shocked me as well. But no, it looks legit. It looks like this is actually a feminine targeted release, okay? So how does it smell? Well, the opening is probably the most polarizing part because it is sweet. And I admit, the first time I smelled this, I didn't like it. I thought I made a drastic mistake buying this fragrance because I blind bought it. But, and as I say, do as I say, not as I do. Do not copy my blind buying ways, okay? But I got this, sprayed it, and I was like, fuck. This is absolutely, like, this is maybe one of the worst Frederic Malles I've ever smelled. Is there a mistake? Has Frederic Malle lost his damn mind? What is he doing? And the thing about it that I learned, as most people will learn with the House of Frederic Malle, is you have to give it time, okay? So you can't judge this by the first spray, or maybe even the first wear or two or three. You really have to wear it and get to know it, because this fragrance to me has a lot of layers to it. It's like an onion. You peel back some of the layers and you start to uncover more and more and more, and it becomes easier and easier and easier to peel, right? So when you first spray, you're hit with sweetness. And what is that sweetness? It basically feels, as many people before me have said, but it basically feels like this sticky pineapple juice was spilled on the counter and just left there to harden, like the sucrose, syrupy sweetness of the pineapple juice has just turned into almost this sugary pineapple-like smell. And my sweet perfume detector went off when I smelled that the first time. I was like, nope, cannot handle it. If you guys know me, you know I do not like sweet fragrances. This is one of my guilty pleasure fragrances. It has absolutely grown on me. The first time I smelled it, I was like, this is just sickly sweet bubblegum candy. Yeah, not for me. And then I begrudgingly went back to it over time and realized all of those layers. I realized I was wrong when I declared, what in the tarnation is Frederic Malle doing? Has he lost his damn mind? And so it isn't what it appears at first, is the thing about music for a while, okay? Because as with all good perfumes, the layers kind of come to you when you're ready. Like the teacher will appear when the student is ready, kind of thing, right? That's how good perfumery should come to you when you're wearing it. And you can't force it sometimes. Sometimes, that's why this hobby of ours is so subjective. Like when I get on here and I see people bash a fragrance, which is warranted. Sometimes fragrances deserve bashing. But sometimes, if that person reviewed the same fragrance a year from today, it would be totally different. Their idea of the fragrance would change for whatever reason. Maybe they changed. Maybe the fragrance changed. It's such a subjective hobby, okay? But my abhorrence to the sweetness of the opening, let's just say, was melted. And slowly, I became more and more intrigued with all of the stuff that was happening underneath. Because many Frederic Malles are not linear, They don't just smell like this the whole way. Many Frederic Malles give you something to come back. They want you to come back and peel more of the onion, if you will. It's like the man who looks at a photograph, and the first time he only sees half of what's going on. The next time he picks up a few more things he missed. The next time even more. And finally, by the fourth or fifth time he looks at the photograph, he thinks, how in the world did I miss all of those pieces the first time I looked, right? So perception and noticing what happens in a perfume does sometimes take time. I will definitely, you have to admit that if you're a perfume lover. You cannot smell something on the first smell and get it all, okay? There is time, and time spent with the fragrance is very important. It's one of the reasons why I never sell my perfume, ever. because how I feel about a fragrance very well may change a day from now, a year from now, years from now. And so what you're thinking about today could be totally different than what you're thinking about tomorrow. So as I've sat with this perfume for the last 3 or 4 years, I noticed a few things that really started to change in my perception. First, even though when you first spray, I still, even now, get the sticky sweet pineapple juice spilled on the counter thing. I absolutely get it. There's no way not to get it, I don't think. That never really goes away. It also never really goes away in the life of the fragrance. It is unbelievably tenacious, that accord that Carlos Benaïm built. But what I notice is there's more to it than that. And the pineapple starts, the more you wear the fragrance, the more you, at least for me, the way I experienced it, is I was almost blinded by the sweetness of the pineapple the first time I smelled this, okay? Like literally almost blinded. I was like, what in the hell, right? But then you start to notice things. Like, for example, now when I smell it, the pineapple feels like there's another side of it. There's a tart side of it. You know, like you can imagine a knife cutting into the skin of the pineapple, into that outer hard shell. And sometimes when you get too close to that outer shell, it's not as sweet. It's a little more tart and bitter. Now I start to get a little bit more tart and vegetal feel from the pineapple in the opening, okay? And it's tangy and very interestingly astringent, almost like you took pineapple juice and orange juice and mixed those two together to create this tropical fruit melange, if you will, okay? But the juice starts to feel a little bit astringent, pulpy, astringent, and tangy, okay? Tangy is a good word for it. There are citruses in the top, I must admit. The first time, like I said, I was blinded by the sweetness wearing this the first couple times. But there are some citruses, for example, lemon. Specifically, a little bit of sour lemon, a little bit of metallic bergamot is what it smells like in the top. But it's a beautiful fragrance. I mean, I have really, really grown to love this fragrance. Music for a While has absolutely grown on me, especially in the heat. I will tell you what, in the heat, this thing shines to me. Now, most people may say, oh, it's way too sickly sweet for the heat. Not for me. I really, really enjoy wearing this in times like today, like June. Now, today's an interesting example because it's not the usual 100-degree blazing summer heat day in Texas. It's probably in the 80s. We got some overcast cloud and a little bit of rain. Perfect day for something like Music for a While. But would I wear this in the 100-degree heat? Yes, I would. So also what you end up noticing, which I missed the first couple times I wore it, are the herbs and the spices. So I love a good aromatic fougere. Aromatic fougères are usually made up of aromatic herbs, rosemary and thyme and all this different stuff, right? That come into play. I think there's some parts spices, part aromatic spices coming in here to play as well, especially in the opening. So you're going to get, like, do you know when you drink a glass of eggnog in the winter, most people will add like cinnamon or nutmeg on top. The eggnog is sort of the main drink, right? But the nutmeg and cinnamon can really make or break the taste of the eggnog, right? That is how kind of the spiced blend starts to come through, okay? But just imagine you're spice blending this pineapple and orange juice mixture, all right? Pineapple's the majority of it, but you put a little bit of orange juice in with it as well. And that is that's a more accurate description of the opening. It's herbal, it's spicy, it's aromatic, it's all of these different things. It's not just super sweet, it's also tangy, but your nose may take a little bit of time to pick that up. At least mine did. If you're not a person who loves sweet fragrances, this may be kind of a, this may teach you patience. This may be like patience is a virtue. You may have to have real patience to get through all the layers of this fragrance, okay? Now, that is just one of the many layers as Music for a While starts to dry down. Next comes the creamy bits, which are interesting to me. If you can imagine vanilla and lavender kind of coming together to give this slight hat tip to something from the past, a little bit of an homage to something like Caron pour un Homme, which is probably one of the greatest lavender vanilla fragrances ever released. And I will review this one of these days. This is from 1934, one of the earliest fragrances marketed towards men, along with Mouchoir de Monsieur by Guerlain. And so if you can imagine this combination of lavender and vanilla, that is really quite beguiling. It really has something going for it that I really enjoy. You know how some lavenders are scratchy and harsh, and here though everything feels mushy and pulpy and ever so slightly powdery, you know, and strangely dry, as if you're sort of standing at the edge of a lavender field complaining to the earth, like, why is this dirt right here dry and barren, and why is there a damn lavender field right here? You know, over here it's dry, over here it's pure lavender. And you have to remember, underneath all of this, I probably didn't do a good job explaining it, but while you're imagining all of this kind of scent coming together, if you've never smelled music for a while, the thing to remember, at least for me when I wear it, everything, every single second of wearing this, there is the proper soul of a fougere lurking in the background. Okay, that's what you always have to keep in mind. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if there was some geranium, because there's no geranium listed. Remember, the note listing is pretty simple: pineapple, bergamot, lemon, and mandarin orange in the top, lavender in the heart, patchouli, amber, labdanum, and vanilla in the base, according to Parfumo. Now, Frederic Malle uses that weird caramel allure irresistible thing. But that is basically the note listing in a nutshell, okay? So I wouldn't be surprised if that is a very incomplete note listing. I wouldn't be surprised if there were spices, there were herbs, like I mentioned earlier, and I also wouldn't be surprised if there's some geranium kind of lurking not only lurking, but really kind of making itself known, that is not getting the proper love in the note listing that it deserves. My nose constantly, as the fragrance starts to dry down and the aromatic bits are beginning to fade away, the spicy bits are beginning to kind of blend into that vanillic sort of combination of lavender and vanilla, and the fougere aspect is really cementing itself in the background of the scent, okay? My nose constantly focuses on something floral. Whatever that something is, everyone thinks about things differently. I was thinking geranium and rose instantly, or one or the other, or maybe even both, but definitely there was this geranium rose combination that probably adds to the spiciness of the fragrance, the greenness of the fragrance. Some people say the pineapple feels green to them. It feels much sweeter, sticky sweet to me, and the geranium is what gives off a little bit of that green to my nose. But I keep thinking there's this floral touch in the heart that is missing now. I will say that I'm not dismissive enough of the possibility to think that maybe the lavender is giving off some floral touches that I'm just not used to lavender giving off these little floral hints. But my guess is it's probably a combination of both. The lavender can give off slightly floral touches, and the rose and geranium can give off floral bits as well. That is just not listed, is what I would assume it to be. Now, the heart of the fragrance, that's really where I think opinions differ greatly. Some people really pick up this caramel accord that's listed. Or if you want to call it like burnt sugar, caramelized burnt sugar, whatever you want to think of it as, caramel or burnt sugar. I don't get that like the way some people do. Some people think of it as a whole note, like, oh, I'm smelling this big caramel note. I don't get it here. The way that I think about this fragrance is the sweetness from that sticky spilled pineapple note in the beginning on the counter lasts much longer than expected. You were going to clean it up, and then you said screw it and went and did something else, and you came back 10 hours later and the damn thing's still sitting there, stickier than ever, right? That's how I think of the stickiness here, like a continuation of what you're smelling in the very beginning. It doesn't really feel like all of a sudden there is this caramel note introduced. I don't get that at all. Some people do. That's not the way I experience the fragrance personally. And, it just feels like there's a continuation of the stickiness from the top, and it's continuously interfering with the fragrance. Like, it almost seems like the fragrance wants to go over here, but the stickiness from the pineapple and the sweetness, which you could see as sugary sweet, but it doesn't feel like a caramelized, like a burnt sugar type accord, right? Keeps pulling it back over here. Keeps kind of trying to pull it back. And as it dries down, you'll notice a couple things. The patchouli, the ambery, the labdanum notes, which makes perfect sense in a sticky fragrance. If you've ever felt labdanum, it's sticky as hell, almost like Chinese finger trap sticky. Like you can't open it. You can't open your fingers. They start to take over. And so here's a dry down, and you definitely get more of the patchouli in the dry down. Hands down, the patchouli is probably one of the strongest notes into the dry down. But what's so special about the patchouli here is unlike the patchouli in Monsieur, which takes over everything, right? That's like 50% patchouli. I'll review Monsieur one of these days. Here, the patchouli was dosed in a way where it was made specifically not to overpower the green lavender type feel in the background. Because remember, that soul of a fougere always hanging out in the background, right? And if you overdose patchouli, it's going to take away from that. The brilliance of this fragrance for me is how you can always smell the proper fougere DNA in the background, behind that modern curtain, right? It's like some opera house that was around in the 1800s, 1700s, that they just modernized for modern times, but it's still the same damn opera house from 250 years ago. That's kind of how this fragrance feels like to me. And here's the thing. This fragrance was composed in a way that really stays true to what it means to be a fougere. But they avoided a very important connotation, I think, and that's that old man-ish like feel that comes with many fougeres, especially aromatic fougeres nowadays. Aromatic fougeres are always associated with old man type fragrances, you know. Grab an old aromatic fougere from the off the shelf, anyone, and it'll be seen as old mannish by the young generation nowadays. I don't get that. I love a good aromatic fougere every now and then, but basically what they did is they used this citrusy, pineapple-y, slightly sweet composition to add a bit of jovial fun to an otherwise very serious character. A fougere can be very serious. And that's why fougeres are great for the office and stuff like that. I still think you could wear music for a while to the office. Personally, I wear it to the office. I wore it to the office yesterday, actually. I forgot to mention, I wore this as my scent of the day yesterday. I'm wearing it as my scent of the day today. Back to back scent of the days for me, which is a rarity. But when I want to review a fragrance, you know, the channel does come first. So I think you could wear this to the office, but I would say, I would not wear this to an ultra serious occasion. Like, for example, if you're going to go into a negotiation with somebody where you have to let that other person know you have steel in your heart, you're not going to give an inch, and the person who gives an inch is the one who's going to lose this negotiation, you don't want to wear this. This has way too fun-loving. This would be great for a date, or something where you want the girl to sense you're a fun guy, you're going to walk around the bar high-fiving people, and, you know, you're going to laugh and have a great time, right? But there's also maybe something a little bit serious underneath. That's a perfect occasion for music for a while for me. A normal day in the office, I think, would be fine. But like the most important presentation of your life or something, I wouldn't wear this. This is too jovial. It's too fun-loving. You want to wear something that captures the attention, you know, in a serious way for those type of occasions. But, you know, for a date, average day in the office, I think this would be fine. So all in all, I would put this in the category of like contemporary fougeres. I was using the term modern fougere earlier, but contemporary fougere actually sounds a little bit more formal. Contemporary fougere. Think about things like Viking, for example, by Creed. I think Creed Viking is a great example of a contemporary fougere. They've modernized the formula. It feels modern. The original Viking from 2017, not the shite Viking cologne or whatever. But the original Viking feels like a modernized contemporary fougere. And so does Music for a While to me. Music for a While feels like a very modern take on a very traditional and classic fragrance genre going back to 1882. So, all in all, I would say I have went from a skeptic to a fan of Music for a While. Even though I hate sweet fragrances, there's something about this that I've just fallen in love with. It's this balancing act. How do you create a fragrance that is so, you know, modern with the pineapple and citrusy notes and all that stuff in the top, the vanillic spices and aromatic herbs and all that stuff? How do you create a fragrance that has all of these fun-loving bits and pieces, but has the heart of it and soul of a fougere in the background like that? Very tough balancing act Carlos Benaïm created. I think he doesn't get the love that he deserves for Music for a While. Personally, my 2 cents on it. And I don't think they marketed it correctly. If they truly marketed this towards women, they made a mistake. And part of me wonders if Frederic Malle knew that and did it anyways because he didn't want to get the Aventus comparison. I think Frederic Malle's smart enough to know he has to protect himself from a brand like his own, which is supposed to be all about artistry and not copying the trends, looking like it's copying someone else, right? So I think he took every precaution, even if it was to his detriment, to make sure that it wasn't seen as a copy of Aventus. Personally, that's the way it looks like to me, because I would say this is one of the rare occasions where I think not only did they get the genre wrong, not that it matters. I mean, it does matter to some people. The general public it matters to is the thing. Most guys wouldn't walk up to a Frederic Malle counter that are not heavily into fragrance and go, oh, that's a women's fragrance? Let me have that. You know, I like it. Let me have it. They would just straight ignore it and go to the masculine ones, right? So I think he almost made a little bit of a blunder in the advertise or the genre, the gendering of this fragrance. I think this should have been marketed, if anything, to men because of that fougere background, and because men are wearing more and more sweet fragrances nowadays. More and more and more and more modern fragrances for men are sweet. I think it's a terrible shit trend, personally. If you're a vintage lover, you hate that trend, but that's the reality of the situation. So while I could see the vanillic sweet aspects, there's also, maybe I could make the case of a little bit of heliotrope, which adds this, you know, spongy aspect to it, the depth to it, being here that maybe isn't listed or something. Think the heliotrope in Dante Bra or something like that, right? But the other than that, the vanilla and the heliotrope, I think this is much more masculine than it is traditionally feminine. But I think anyone could get away with this. But most men who are fougere lovers may at least be fascinated with the weirdness of this release. How to take that fougere, traditional classical DNA fougere, and make it modernized or contemporary. So that's my thoughts on Music for a While. If you have any opinions on this, if you're familiar with the set, or just with the fact that Frederic Malle is sadly stepping down and Hope may be his last release and it's a desert gem, I'd love to hear your thoughts as always. It's a pleasure, doing these reviews for you guys, and I love you. Thanks for being here. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.